a few seconds. Very well. So we are recording now. I'm going to use three different software, PDF to read the case study, the compiler. Okay, you can use any compiler, even online compiler, and PowerPoint. PowerPoint is free because we want to scratch something to explain something. So I'll switch between this software. Now, the other thing is, or let me just re-emphasize that this case study is very important because it will we will apply all the principles that we learned in the course or in classes on simple example or one example. Everything will be applied here. So I want you to focus because if you understand this, then you can apply the same principles to any other case study. Now we took the simplest case study, which is student. All right. In this part, we will take an example and apply all the principles to it to further clarify the class idea. The example is the student. Now, the first thing that we want to explain. Now, since I'm going to, or I want to create a class student, okay, in this case, the first step is to develop the class diagram or the class. Here I have student, and if you remember, in student I have attributes and I have methods. Okay, so the first attribute is for sure, I'll make it now public. All right, only now. Later we will change it when we progress with implementation. We'll change it to be private because this is the how to say it. I cannot make it private from the beginning because I want to apply some principles, but later we will make it private. Okay, so for sure the first attribute is the ID, and for sure the student has name and has email and has specialization, etc. So the first step is to identify the attributes. Okay, so I'll leave it to your imagination. Whatever attributes you want to add, but they should be meaningful and relevant. All right, like ID, name, specialization. College, maybe if we are applying this, or department if you are going to apply it to all departments in the college. All right, address, email, and so on. Of course, we cannot cover all these things, so I'll take a sample, which is the ID, the name, and the specialization. All right. The second step is to give types. Now, ID in our case, in our college, is integer because most of the IDs are 2021 6123, for example. All right, so it's an integer. And some other organizations, some other institutions, it should be string. Why? Because usually they use the specialization or the college, like in National University, NU 1234, for example. All right, so this is not integer. Let's think about it in this way. So let's start with the first. We have activity here. Thuraya, there will be no quiz today. The quiz will be next week after you understand all the principles of, or I want to make sure that you understood everything. So just to give you more examples to be more ready for the quiz. All right, so we will consider that the main attributes that the student has is name, ID, GPA, specialization, degree, study mode, evening or morning. Okay. In general, I will start with name, specialization, and ID. So the first thing is to start with the class student. Remember that it's not mandatory to have the first letter capital letter, but this is a tradition, all right? So here also remember to put the semicolon at the end, so you'll be ready. Integer ID, string, name. Also, I prefer to use capital letter for the variable names, and string initialization. Okay. All right. So this is what we have. We have the attributes now, only the attributes and nothing else but the attributes. But here, if you notice that I didn't put access specifier, so here I'll make them public now. All right. Remember what I told you, because I want to access the variable to make sure that the class is working properly. So I can define here student S1. Sorry, S1 or ST1, okay, and that's it. Now I defined an instance. I called ST1 as instant from students. All right. So here I can access now the ID, the string, the name, and the specialization, etc. because they are public. All right. I can write, for example, ST1 dot name equals. Usually we use this name. Okay, and I can define another st2, okay, and also I can use st2 dot name equals Fatima, for example. All right, now I can use this as variables, but also I can access them because they are public. Now, if I want, for example, to print cout name of the student is, for example, st1 dot name. All right, I use dot to access the attributes because they are public. All right, so I'll run it and let's see the result. Okay, so this is what we got. The name of the student is Ali because I could access it because it's public. Now, very important to know that if they are not, if I did not put this word public, then I'll get error. All right. Why? See, directly I got this error. The error states that member student name declared at line 6, this is line 6, okay, is inaccessible. Why? Because it's private. And this is the next step. We want to make the data private and inaccessible, but not now. So this is the first step. I declared or I defined the student, the basic information of the students. Now, if I want to define a method, these are attributes, right? So I call them, here I can write attributes, all right? And next, I will create the methods. Also, since I put public, then everything, unless I use another access specifier, then everything is public. All right. So let's see what is here, what we have here. So this is all what we've done. Okay. In this example, the attributes are public, which means that they can be accessed directly from outside the class using that operator. This is, as we said, just at the beginning. At the beginning, I've considered here all attributes are public. Only at the beginning. Later, I have to hide them, because if you remember when we were talking about information hiding, we said only the essential information should be displayed to the user. All right. Now, what if I want to create some methods? If you remember, when we talked about method, we said the operations that the class can do or can be applied to that object. So what can we do with student? For example, calculate average. Or calculate remaining hour. Or advise. But actually, these are very or not sort of complex methods. So the simplest method that I advise you to use when I ask you to suggest a method, suggest info. What is this info? To print the information. Okay, and also usually in every class I have set and get. What's the set and get? Set, it means to set some value, like set name, okay, of string, I'll explain to you, and get to return the value. Now in this class, everything is public, as we said. Here, it's public, so I don't mind. I don't have any problem to access this. But now, if I change them to private, I should have some method that can access. And if you remember, we called them accessors and mutators, right? So here, the first method that I suggest is void of. And it doesn't need any arguments, all right? So here, what I'll do, cout the name of the student is name. Okay. And the ID of the student is ID. I need the new line also here. By the way, this is not just a practice to write code, but also the way of thinking. I wanted to see how we are thinking to generate or to create this class specialization is specialization. All right. I prefer also to what is this? Why it's wrong? Okay. I'll leave some spaces here, so everything will be at the same line. So let's try it. And instead of using cout, I will call st1.info. st1. Of course, I'll get some meaningless because I didn't give value to ID and specialization. So maybe we'll get rubbish and zeros. Okay, so st1.info. And let's run it. All right, so this is what we got. The name of the student is Ali. The ID of the student is 1. It's random. The specialization of the student is empty. Okay, I don't have anything because I didn't pass any values. So in this case, we need to pass some values to make sure that the program is working properly. So st1 dot name. Sorry, not name. Sorry. Dot ID. Equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and st1 dot specialization equals. See, since it's a string, I put this quotation or quotes is equal to MIS. Okay. Then if I execute it, I have put the value. I've given the values to all the variables. The second student doesn't have any value, only the name. All right, so st1.info. Let's see what will happen when we execute it. All right, so run build task, and then we will run it. All right, so exactly this is what was expected. The name of the student is Ali. The ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the specialization is this one. All right, so now all what we've done is to create a public. This is the simplest way of creating classes. All right, I have attributes, which are all of them are public. I have methods, also public. All right, so this is the next step of the class. So the methods are the functions that the students can do or can be applied to the student. Student attributes such as accessing private or protected attributes, setting and getting attributes, and printing information. So here we have the same thing. Void information. This is the these are the values. All right. Now the constructor. See, actually, now I should change the attributes. I want to hide the information. I don't want anybody to write like st1 dot and get all the attributes. So what I'll do in order to hide them, I'll change them to private. Okay. Of course, the method prefer to be public. Now, I cannot access them. I cannot give them values. Here, see, directly I got errors here. Student name inaccessible, student ID inaccessible, and again, student name is inaccessible, etc. Now, in this case, what to do? How to access the variables? First of all, I can create modifiers. What are the modifiers? Remember the set and get, right? In other words, it's the set. So I can here write set name of. Okay, now I've created the modifier, but let's think about the contents or what should I pass? Now I should pass the name such that it put the value of put the attribute name with the passed value. So I should pass an argument of type string. I'll call it n, or name. See, actually, usually we use this. we use a small letter, but it's different than this capital letter. But I want you to get confused. I'll call it name 1. All right, it's not the same as name, or you can call it X or Y or whatever. All right, now will it return any value? No, that's why it's of type void. Okay. What this function will do is to set name equals name1. This is a setter or a modifier. Mutator, not modifier, or a setter. Okay. The other thing that I want to add, since they are private, only if they are private you need these things, is the getter, which is we call accessor or getter or get. Okay. Again, get name. Usually also it's better to use capital letter at the beginning. So here I will use name of. It doesn't need any parameters, but it will return the name to the main function. So it will be string of type string. Okay. What I'll do is just to return name. That's it. The same thing can be done with other variables. So I'll copy this and paste it. Okay, and also this one. Then we'll change. Now with ID instead of ID, I should pass integer, right? Also, I'll call it ID1. And inside ID equals ID1. All right. What about specialization? Here also we need to change the name of the function, set ID. And the other one is set specialization. Well, it's enough to write SPEC of string SPEC, and here specialization equals the past parameters. All right, so that's it. We prepared all the setters, and now about the getters. Integer ID, and you return ID only. Okay, string get specialization, return specialization. That's it. Now, although they are private here, but I can access them using these functions. So here in the main function, I cannot say set1.name, but I can say student1.set ID of 1, 2, 3, for example. All right, and st1 dot set name of a string. See, that's why the variables should have some meaning, because here it gives you some clues. Here it's required to give the variable name1, and it's of type string. Okay, if you can see here, name1 of type string. So I put string and I write the name and semicolon. All right, no need to for other things. Also student2, I'll remove it just to reduce the text. Also here, st1 dot set what specialization, right? When you put this parenthesis, you will get specialization is string SPEC, Okay, that means you need to pass specialization. In this case, I'll pass MIS. So now I have an object called student that includes all this information, and this is what we call encapsulation. All right. That means I have 3 data items or 3 parts in one variable, which is student, st1. It includes the name, the ID, and the specialization in one variable. And this is what we called, or what this is the principle of encapsulation. Now, st1.info, it will print everything, of course. Let's run it. All right. Here, all the information have been printed correctly. Now, the first principle that we talked about is the encapsulation. Encapsulation means I've created an object that includes all this information, all right, in one variable. I don't want to, declare more variables and the information will be scattered here and there, but instead I put everything in one variable or in one class. All right, so now talking about the constructors. Actually, the constructor will compensate the setter or the the getters, all right, or the mutators and the accessors. The constructor here is to initialize the class. Constructor can be used. The constructor should be, these are the most or the features or the characteristics of the constructor. It has to satisfy all these conditions. First, it should be public, same name as the class name, and does not return value. Remember these 3. If any of these 3 was not satisfied, then it's not a constructor. In this case, if you can see, student string name, string specialization, and integer ID. Inside, all what I did is name equal name, specialization equal SP, and ID equal ID. So let's write the constructor here. And I'll show you something here also. Here, constructor. It should have the same name as the class. The class name is student. All right, so I'll call the constructor as student. Okay, student. Usually, the constructor will initialize the values, these values. It's not mandatory. Sometimes, I'm sorry. Sometimes the constructor may print a message. Okay, so here the constructor will get integer ID, string name, and string specialization. Okay, that's it. See, I will write the constructor here. Okay, so here what we have, ID equals, ID, capital ID equals ID, name equals name, and specialization equals SP. Here we can do some modification, like printing a message. Okay, like here, cout variable, the class initialized or the class initialized. That's it. \n, and that's it. All right. So now I don't want to use this. Okay. See, directly I got an error. Why I got an error? Because now I have a constructor. So I have to create, when you create the object, the constructor will be called directly. So here I don't call the constructor. Okay, I remove these things. So if you can see the error, no default constructor exists for class student. Default constructor, I'll explain to you later. So now here you have to write equals student of, you should give the constructor, see here, or constant student, or student variable, or string student, name, string specialization, and integer ID. So I'll pass 1, 2, 3. Then the name should be, let's change the name, and specialization is CS. Now I have created the object. Okay. Now st1.info will print the result that, or the attributes that I've passed. Let's execute it. All right. Okay. See, I got a message, the class initialized. This is from the constructor. Okay. Then it's what we got here, name is Ahmed and student is 1, 2, 3 ID, and the specialization is, now I can define any other student, like student st1 st2 equals student of, right, Fatima. Here I'll get error because the first one is 2, 3, 4 is an integer, then is string, then MIS. Okay, and of course semicolon. Now here also st2.info print the information of the student. Why this student has no member info? Okay, info capital letter. All right, and we run it. All right. Initialized, the class initialized because I called the constructor twice. Okay, the name of the student is Ahmed, the ID is 1, 2, 3, specialization CS, the name of the student is Fatima, the ID of the student is 2, 3, 4, and specialization is MIS. I can create any student now. That's easy. Now let's see. Sometimes maybe you saw that in some cases, now we are talking about the constructor. This is the constructor that we are talking about. If I, for example, missed passing some arguments, okay, let's say if I passed only the student name and for any reason you missed passing one of the arguments, then you'll get an error. Now to avoid this, what to do? If you remember the default value, then I'll put here 0. Okay, name equals blank, and specialization also equals blank. Why is that? In this case, if I don't pass one of the arguments, it will take the default value. See now, the student or this student, the error has been removed. Okay, or you know, sometimes I can, for example, name, I can put not identified. See, now we are talking about professional programming. All right. Why? If you don't pass the name, then the name will be not identified. This is what you'll get. Let's see. suppose that I have another student. Now, of course, Ahmed will when we printed, we didn't pass what? We didn't pass the specialization. So let's run it and see. Okay. You can see here, I passed the name Ahmed. I passed the ID 123, but I didn't pass the student specialization. So what I got is not identified, and not identified is the initial value, right? Or the default value. If I didn't pass anything, let's take another example without any thing. For example, here. Okay, equals student of, without passing any argument. When I print it, I'll get the ID 0, the name unidentified or not identified, and the specialization is not identified. CST3 dot info. Right, so turn. Okay, run. Okay, see the third student, the name of the student is not identified. The ID of the student is 0. The specialization is not identified. So any missing information will be, we will get unidentified or 0. And this has been done when we put the default values. All right. So this is, although it's a small trick in programming, but it's very important. You will avoid a lot of errors that you may get. Okay, now let's get back and give Ahmed his specialization, and the last one also will remain unidentified. Okay, so this is the constructor. Okay, this is now the encapsulation. We explain the encapsulation. Now you have the student that has all this information in one argument, like name, specialization, ID, etc. Everything in one one simple entity, or one entity. You can use them directly. Okay, now the abstraction. Actually, we talked about the abstraction, right? But before that, let's talk about inheritance. Now, inheritance, I have student. I'll create or abstraction or inheritance included in abstraction. Okay, so encapsulation is done. Abstraction. When we talked about abstraction, we said sometimes I have to force the subclass to have a special or a specified how to say it, specified method, right? So now I will create an abstract student, ABS, ST means abstract class for student. It doesn't have anything else, but it has this pure virtual function. Remember this? Last lecture we talked about. We'll call it honor list. What's in the honor list? The honor list is how to, if the GPA above a specific value, then the student names will be placed in the honor list. So if you can see here, I've created student, but now it inherits the ABS abstract student. All right, it will inherit here. So everything is just fine. Here we added GPA, okay, but it will get I will get error directly. So let's go back to our program here. I will add GPA because I'll need it here. Double or float. Okay, and And here also I'll change the here I'll change the constructor. It should have double. Okay. Here also GPA was GPA. We didn't do any major change. All what we've done is, but here also let's give the GPA initial value or default value equals 0. All right, to avoid any errors. So here in the declaration, let's run it. In the info also, we will add GPA. The GPA of the student is GPA. Okay, so now let's run it. Okay, so the first student, if you can see, name of student Ahmed, ID of the student 123, specialization is CS, GPA is 0. Why is it 0? Because we didn't pass value. Also for other student. I will remove one of the students and remove and work only on one student. Okay. The GPA, I pass it like 75. All right. Then I run it again. Okay, no, I think there was an error, right? Yes. Okay, that's why it ran the previous version. Okay. Perfect. So this is what we got. Student is Ahmed. ID of the student is 123, and specialization CS, and GPA is 75. Okay. Now, also since we know everything, you know, to make it easier for you, I think I will remove the extra functions. Or yeah, I will remove this. Setters and I'll keep them. Okay, here I will define, this is the class abstract student. Of course, since I'm using this editor, it's very easy to use long names, but you can use AS. Okay, abstract student. So here what I'll do is to define the function that all subclasses should use. So virtual, I don't want to add any functionality or return any value. Void, okay, honor list. What I'll do, of course, till now is all right. I can have it like this, but in the student here, okay, it will inherit from abstract student. Okay, so I have this class, super class, which is the abstract class, and of course, intentionally I didn't put equal 0. Okay, I have this abstract student, and this is exactly what we did. If you can see here, we defined class abstract student, and we have the virtual function, but here equals 0, I didn't put it yet. Okay, so in the here, where is it? Yeah. See the functionality. If the GPA of the student, of a specific student, okay, is greater than 80, you will be, it will get a message that the students will be in the honor list. All right. So let's try doing this. See now, if I execute this with errors, let's see what errors we have. I don't know where the errors are, but actually I can expect that here, since we didn't put any definition to the function. All right. So I think this is the error. Yeah, it finished successfully. So let's run it. I think we are running out of time, so we'll continue. See, now nothing happened. Okay, so what was the use of having this function? Actually here, just because I didn't put equals 0, I didn't make it mandatory. Now, if I run it, I'll get error. Why? Because this function should be declared. All right, so the error here, if you go browse on the error, yeah, cannot declare a variable st to be abstract type of student, student st, etc. Because the student doesn't have the function. So here, what I'll do, I have to declare the constructor. Sorry, not the constructor, the abstract function. I remove this to avoid any or make it very long. So what's the name of the function? Here, it's called honor list. So I'll define it here. As you can see, void, where is it? Void, exactly the same thing. So this is the last thing. After that, we'll continue next lecture. So here, okay, I'll put here void and what was the name of the function? Honor list. Okay. And I have to put definition here. If the student GPA is greater than 80, okay, see out your name will be in the honor list. Else, see out, sorry, your name will not be listed, etc. We don't want to make it. Okay. Now let's see. Here, st.info, I don't want it, so st1.honor list, and let's see what we will get. Remember, we are talking about abstraction. Okay. So terminal. All right, successfully. Then I will run it. Okay. Sorry, your name will not be listed or in the list. I'll just change this. Check if we change the GPA, make it 81. Okay, and we run it again. Okay, name will be in the or listed in the honor list. So this is the abstraction. Any derived class should have this function. I'll stop now. I don't want to take longer time now, but please watch the recording and implement everything. And that you have the PDF file. you can use it. So I'm expecting we will continue next lecture, inshallah. But the quiz will be after we finish this practice or this practical case study. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll stop recording, stop sharing, and if you have any questions, please feel free.